Okay, hello and welcome to Hertfordshire. You'll be pleased to know that it is 2 o'clock and I've actually managed to get out of my pyjamas. I'm delighted to be here with you today. So for those of you that have not had a chance to read my bio on the IGD website, I'm Sam. I've got my own consultancy. I'm an executive coach and I help individuals and companies explore change to fulfill their full potential. For the 11.5 years prior to setting up my consultancy, I led the agenda on leadership, talent and culture for PrEP. Now today's going to be quite fast paced. We've only got about 40 minutes. So what I'd like you to do is make sure you've got a pen and paper to hand, take some notes down, and I will intend to answer as many questions as I can at the end of the session, but also we will keep a note of any questions that you have, and I'll be back on the 13th of May with a specially curated session which will answer the majority of your questions for you. So let's have a look at the first slide. So how are you? So I don't think you need me to point out that we're in the middle of experiencing something absolutely extraordinary. Isn't it incredible that in just a period of weeks, everything that we may have took for granted, our routines, our habits, our liberty, seeing our family, have all been called into question, and it can feel quite overwhelming. I'm sure I'm not the only one that of late has struggled to get to sleep some nights, but also during the day struggled to stay awake because I'm not quite sure where to put myself sometimes. And what's important is that we think about this more of a period of discovery rather than a recovery. And the tools that I'm going to share with you today, some of them you may have seen before, some of them may be brand new to you. And you may also think, as I'm taking you through them today, well, this is great and it's interesting, but maybe it's not for me right now, and that's fine. What I want to give you is a toolkit for the future. So please make your notes throughout. A number of my clients, friends and family have talked at the moment about wanting to get back to normal, wanting to get things back the way they were. And this is something called normalcy bias. And whilst we will emerge from what we're experiencing right now in the future, I want to point out that things won't be the same normal again. They will be different, and that creates a huge opportunity for us to grow. So I want to share this with you. So this is a model based on the work of Stephen Covey, and it's been around on a few social media platforms of late, but I think it really gives us a good anchor for what I've curated for you today. And that is, when change comes in, especially when we don't feel that we're in control of it, we can start off with a feeling of fear. We can start off with a feeling of just wanting to bury our head in the sand, head under the pillow, and just wait for everything to pass. Or we can start to over worry about things. And ultimately what we create is a vicious cycle for ourselves, and it becomes exhausting. But then the next phase is the interesting phase, because that's when we start to learn, because whatever happens over the next few months to a year, we're going to learn new things about ourselves, our roles, our relationships, the way that we operate inside and outside the home are all opportunities for us to learn. And when we do that, we can move through to the growth zone. How can we grow as people? And I want you to think about this as we move through the webinar today. Which of those zones right now do you feel that you are sitting in the majority of the time? And what are the things that you can be doing to start to move towards the growth zone? So let me share with you the 3 agenda points for today. So the first piece I'm going to take you through is, how do we set great goals? If we want to move forward and use our growth mindset, how do we get there? Then I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the work of Carol Dweck and take you into further detail about the growth mindset and how you can apply this to yourself and the way that you grow and develop. And then final piece for today is about how to create your future living your values. Now, living your values is really important, and now is a really great opportunity for you to really understand what they are for you, how they work, and what space you've been working in where you may not have been living your values, and therefore your true potential is being held back. So let's start with how to set great goals. So let's think 2020, January, new decade. Some of you may have started out with really great goals in place. You spent time to think about what this new decade was going to mean to you. And you know what? If you did, congratulations. It's a great way to start the new year. However, there may be a tendency now that our external environment has completely changed for us right now to throw those out the window. And my advice to you is just don't. One of the key things about learning to grow is how you adapt. And actually achieving the goal for most of my clients isn't actually the most important thing. It's what they experience on the journey on the way. I can share with you personally that some of my clients have asked to pause for a while they cope with the rigmarole of homeschooling, queuing up for shopping, and basically just wanting to take a break, just wanting to take some time out. And all that will come back online in the future. So I've got some time for myself. So I've started to grow fruit and vegetables. We'll see how that goes, but I won't know unless I try. And also I've been working quite hard on my business offer to see how I can make my offer more digital, more remote, hence dipping my toe into the opportunity to deliver this webinar today. The most important thing is that you keep growing. So I'm going to ask you a question, and it might seem a big question right now, but I just want to get a sense of where you guys are at. So what do you want to be doing this time next year? And I'm going to ask you to vote in a poll. Vote now. I'm looking forward to this. Okay, let's have a look. That's great. Okay, so 7% of you, super clear, fantastic, congratulations. That's really important. And I'm hoping what I can do today is just help you maybe accelerate that journey a little bit with some tools. And then we had 66%. You've got an idea, so good for you. And it's always good, you know, life is not about being perfect and having, you know, A, B, C, D, E. It is around, I've got an idea about where I want to go. And what I want to do today is just help you delve a little bit deeper into that to really make it more robust. And for those of you that were this slightly lower down on that survey, let's see where we get to. Remember, for all of you, make the most of the Q&A opportunity so that after I've finished delivering for you today, that I can give you something that's specific to your needs. Okay. So how do we set great goals? So some of you may have dialed into the webinar that I delivered for IGD back in February, and we talked about building a brilliant PDP. Now, if you didn't see that, this is a little bit of a recap, but if you did, I'd like you to go onto the website and you can view it there. But these are the 3 pillars that I explore with my clients because you are a whole person. And so there are 3 pillars there. We explore career. So where are you at with your career? And I don't mean necessarily the job you have or don't have right now. Some of you may be furloughed. Some of you may have picked up extra tasks and responsibilities while we move through what's happening in our external environment. But what is that? Where are your skill sets? What are those behaviors and attributes that you want to develop further? Then we look at relationships. So in your relationships, which ones are you investing in but getting little back from? Which ones are sponsoring you and empowering you to move forward? And thinking about how those can influence how you move forward to achieve what you want out of life. And then finally, your health. How are you? Physically, mentally, do you feel resourced? And spend some time thinking about those things that you might want to think about changing or adapting or moving in order to make you feel tip-top. So the first piece of takeaway work I've got for you today is to think about where do you want to be in your career in 12 months time. Now that's a lot right now. So I break that down a little bit more. I would set yourselves bite-sized chunks and I would start to work on 3-month chunks. So where do you want to be in 3 months? and then build on the next 3 months, etc. Once you've identified that step, I would come back, well, where are you now? Where are you now? What's working for you? And you will see, if you watch the webinar from February, I talked about completing a SWOT analysis on your skill set and your behaviours. So what are your current strengths? What are your weaknesses, which is a word I don't like. I prefer areas for development. However, it's not part of the model. So what are your current strengths? And what are your current weaknesses? And if you know those two things, then what opportunities do you have to explore? And if you were to do nothing different from now on, what would be the threats if you took no action? Then when you've got those two pieces of the jigsaw, what is halfway? What does 6 weeks look like? If you're going to set yourself a 3-month goal, where do you want to be halfway? And make sure that you identify that, and also think about how you're going to celebrate it. Because the pat on the back that you give yourself, whatever that reward is, whether it's a pizza, a movie night, whether it's speaking to friends on house party, whatever it is that you're doing to socialize right now, how are you going to celebrate that 6-week point, and how will you reflect on it? Then it's about making space. So it's a little bit back to the Covey model that I shared with you earlier on. So where are you in those zones at the moment, and what do you need to let go of to start on that journey? If you are feeling afraid, if you are feeling overwhelmed, go back to the facts. What is actually happening, and what can you do to positively influence that, and who can help you with that? But in order to grow, you do need to create that space. So what do you need to let go of? And then finally, what is the first step you can take tomorrow? It's a beautiful, beautiful weather that we're experiencing at the moment. I've just looked out my window. Think about those steps when you're taking your exercise, whether it's an hour walking, cycling, and it's important to get out there and do that. Health is very important, and getting out there and getting some fresh air is good. But what is that step that you can make tomorrow, and who needs to know? So now I'm going to take you through some tools around growth mindset. So quick hands up, how many of you have heard of the work of Carol Dweck? Okay, very good. So this is the book that she wrote, and I'm still not very great with my camera angles, forgive me. Carol Dweck was a teacher, and she worked with groups of young children, adolescent children, around the age of about 10. And what she did is she noticed that when she gave a group of 10-year-olds puzzles or tests to do, half of the group would roll their sleeves up and they would relish the chance to push themselves, learn something new. The other half of the group started to make excuses and swear and just say, oh, why are you making us do this? And they were operating from a place of fear of failure. The first group of children were offering a growth mindset, and the other half of the group, where they were in fear and they were pushing back and making excuses, they were operating from a fixed mindset. So let's have a look at that in a little bit more detail. So I want you to think about your goals, but also let's think about you right now. So when COVID-19 came into play, how did you react? Did you avoid it? Did you just think, oh God, this will go away, it won't really affect me, I'm just going to go home, I'll wait to be told what to do, and not really face up to what was happening? Or did you embrace it? Did you start to see this as an opportunity to have a break? You know, if you're anything like me and have worked for 20 years in retail, that moment in which you could have a break and start to reflect and really think about what it is you want can be quite liberating. When you found out that you would have to queue to get your shopping, when you couldn't see your family, when you had to wave through a window or FaceTime on Mother's Day to your family, did you just think, oh, what's the point? Or did you find ways around that? I don't know about you, but I'm trying my hardest to get my mum tech savvy. I'm setting her up Tesco app so she can get her food shopping in, started on FaceTime, etc. So what are the things that you did in order to deal with the obstacles that were put in place? When you realised that we were going to be in lockdown over here for a lot longer than we initially were thought, we talked about 3 weeks, it's looking like it's going to be longer. Did you just think, oh, what is the point? You know, did you see any efforts that you were making about developing yourself or making the most of the time that you had at home? It's fruitless. But did you think about it as an opportunity to master something? And then think about a little bit about how you know, I'm in a local social media group for the town that I live in. And there's a lot of fear going on about people not social distancing when they're out in the shops, etc. And there's a lot of people criticising other people about the way that they're operating outside of the house, rightly or wrongly, but there is a lot of criticism. And so instead of some of the groups saying thank you, blah blah blah, what they're doing is they are pushing back and just saying, oh, whatever, get on with your own story. Or are they finding lessons? Are they thinking about ways around it? And I know in our local market now, there's a big sign on the wall with 2-meter distance to show how far people should be apart. But ultimately, whether you operate from a fixed or a growth mindset, if you operate with a fixed mindset, you can fail to achieve your full potential. But if you operate from a growth mindset, you can find even higher levels of achievement. And therefore, what you can do is achieve the unexpected because you're taking risks and you're putting yourself out there and you're not worried about whether you look stupid or you fail. What you're looking for is the opportunity to grow and learn. So let's think about, I'm going to use some examples during the presentation on companies, and I've chosen to use Apple today because I don't think we've got anyone from Apple on the call today, but if there are, hello. But if there isn't, Apple is just a global company that we all recognise. And if we think about the way that they've reacted to COVID-19, they immediately shut all of their shops, which would be unthinkable. Oh my God, we'll not make any profit, blah, blah, blah. Fixed mindset, growth mindset, let's just close the shops. They've invested $15 million in the global response. They have updated their digital offer to make digital learning for children more accessible. They've donated 20 million face masks. And they've moved all their global conferences, which if you remember, whenever there's a launch of an iPhone or an iPad, it was these big conferences that were streamed around the world. They're going digital. And their statement on how to deal with COVID-19 was, this occasion is piled high with difficulty and we must rise to the occasion. As our case is new, so we must think anew and act anew. How has your company's responded? And those of your friends and colleagues, think about what they've done. And there's some real heroes out there, but think about those as examples. How can you move into using your growth mindset in order to create your path to mastery? So ask yourself, as a summary, how much of your goals are truly stretching? How much of what you want to do is doing more of what you're currently doing and is limiting and easy? What are the elements in your plans that you've got that you may feel aren't possible? And review and approach your commitments with a growth mindset. So now let's move on to creating your future by living your values. And the work I'm going to refer to here is by these guys. Oh, I'm still working on my camera action. This is a book called Built to Last. It's by 2 gentlemen called Porris Collins, American guys. And they spent 20 years looking at successful organizations, so Coca-Cola, 3M, Ford, to really understand what it was that they did that made them successful and resilient through hard times. And the work that they summarized is using this model here. Now, I'm sure that you recognize the model, it's a yin-yang, but what they used it for is to show that there is an inside of an organization that's core, and then there's the outside of the organization that the core allows them to create. And it's a balance. It has to be a balance. So the inside, the guiding star, which you can see there, is what is core in a business. So if you think about your organizations that you work for, there is the mission statement, values and behaviors. And I'm sure most of you will know what the ones are for your organization. And those are the things that don't change. Those are the things that when something happens outside of the business that they hold true to. This then allows them to create the story that they will share. So how do they articulate this, and how do their customers and the people that interact with that business experience it? And they call it a big, hairy, audacious goal. And it's a vivid story that people remember when they're thinking about that business. So let me share with you Apple's example. So inside of Apple, they have their guiding star, which is to bring the best user experience to its customers through its innovation, software, hardware, and services. And their values are accessibility, education, environment, inclusion and diversity, privacy, and supplier responsibility. What does that allow them to create? Well, their statement is, we believe that we are on the face of the earth to make great products that are not changing. Now, I don't have a view on either of their approaches, but it is a really great example about how what their core is creates the story that we experience as their customers. So let's have a look at how you can apply this to yourself. So I'm going to give you a piece of homework now. What we've also done for you is this slide deck, and the recording of this webinar is going to be posted on the IGD website following today. And we've also created a worksheet for you. So whilst you'll be able to see this slide deck today, you can also have access to a printout so you can run these activities away from your screens. So the first piece of how to identify your values is, I would suggest that if possible, and I know that you guys are isolating, some of you will be on your own with that, and some of you will be with partners or flatmates, but I would ask you to ask somebody to pose these questions to you. And as I say, they're going to be in the worksheet. If you can't do that, and you're not with anybody, and you can't email the sheet through to anybody to do this over the phone with you, then find a quiet space to complete these questions yourself. Take your time. So the first question you'll go through is, what is important to you? And what you must do is not edit, just write down the words and the phrases that come up as you start to think about that question. Then think about what it is that you value in the world, in the people around you, in how you operate. And then if you had to choose 3 words to express what you were about, what would they be? And just keep adding to that list. Then think about why that's important to you. What is it that's coming up for you when you think about it? What reaction does it create? And then what are the consequences? What happens when these things aren't in place? And then finally think about, how does it make you feel? So just keep writing the list out. And if somebody is asking you these questions, just ask them to do the same thing. Just keep asking them to write down the words that come up. Once you've done that, have a look back at what you've said and what you've shared and what you've noted down. What are the themes that appear? Are there key phrases, key words that keep coming up? Have you repeated anything a number of times? If you have written them down yourselves, have you written them in really bold text or circled them or underlined them? Which are the ones that call out? And then what you're looking for is your maximum 6, but I would say the top 4 words that really, really hold tight for you, and those are your values. When you've identified your values, the next piece of homework for you is quite key, because you need time to reflect on the words that have come out for you. And so again, I'm going to encourage you to get out into the fresh air if you're not self-isolating. If not, just sit and find a quiet space. Now, that could be, if you've got a busy household, that could be that you get up earlier than everybody else one day and just see the sun come up and do this piece of work, or just go for a walk and mull it over. Think about your goal setting exercise earlier. Think about the Covey cycle. Where are you in those zones? Think about your growth mindset. Think about your values. If you were to achieve your goal by living your values, what would it allow you to create? What is your big, hairy, audacious goal? Now, you must keep this simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't try and write it as though you're writing a letter to a bank manager. Almost do the opposite. I would like you to think about it like you're explaining it to a child. So if you were going to explain it to a 6-year-old, how would you simplify that out? How would you make it so it was memorable, achievable, and that it's something that people will remember of you? Now, one of the tasks that I sometimes ask my clients to do when they're struggling to articulate who they are and what they're about is I will ask them to write a letter to their grandchildren that they may well or not have grandchildren, because obviously they may not be old enough to have grandchildren yet. But how do they want to be described? What is that legacy piece? What is it that they want to have their family and their grandchildren talk about them with? You know, what are those stories that they shared? Now, what I want to share with you now is the way that Apple articulated their BHAG using a short video. So just a few summaries. I know that has been fast-paced, and you do need time to reflect on what I've shared with you today. So hence why we're going to share the webinar with you afterwards, and the worksheet for you to take some time to reflect. And I do want to hear your questions, because one of the joys of doing what I do is to really answer the questions that people are offering. So if you can submit your questions, I'd be really grateful so that I can deliver your webinar on the 13th of May. But before I go, I just want to share with you my top tips. Put your plan in place using a growth mindset. Don't create obstacles before you've even made that first step forward. Don't think about what's going to go wrong. Think more about what's going to go right and what you're going to gain. Be kind to yourself and seek out opportunities that our current situation could create for you, rather than what it's stopping you from doing, and get yourself ready for the new normal as we start to emerge. Live your values, they're yours, and they should be empowering, and they should drive you forward. And as you start to move forward and grow as an individual, make sure you share those stories and celebrate your successes on the way.